Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education. Featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
Hi everyone, this is Alexis Avila of Prepped and Polished, a tutoring and test prep firm that provides in-person and online tutoring for the SAT, ACT, grad school, and private school tests, as well as academic subject tutoring such as math, science, English, languages, and study skills coaching. For more information, please check out preppedandpolished.com. And our tutoring tips series continues right now with 5 ways to get your children hooked on reading. And get to know the Prepped and Polished community. You can find us on Facebook at Prepped and Polished. You can check us out on Twitter at Prepped Polished and Instagram Prepped and Polished 1. Check us out on those social media accounts. Remember, if you have any questions or comments about the episode, feel free to email us at any time, radio@preppedandpolished.com. We love hearing from you. Let's get right to it. 5 ways to get your children hooked on reading. So, a lot of students get distracted by all this digital entertainment, but still, we need to instill the quiet joy of reading in our children. So don't lose hope. There's 5 ways we have to get your children hooked on reading. Number 1 is let them choose. Let your child pick out books to read, because children are more likely to read a book that they've chosen for themselves. And by picking the book, they're expressing their interests and take that ownership of the decision to read that particular title. I mean, obviously, if they pick up a bunch of comic books, that's going off the wrong track. But give them some authority to choose, and then they'll start to really enjoy reading. Another way to get your children hooked on reading is bring a book to life, and let me explain what that means. For many children who are used to viewing stories on a screen, it can be a difficult leap to get engaged in the imagination of reading. So give them a helping hand by bringing an aspect of their chosen book to life. For example, if you're reading the book together, act out the story with different voices for different characters. And as your child gets older, discuss the book over dinner. So make it fun. Tip 3 on getting your child hooked on reading is try a series out. So, you know that moment when your child's favorite TV show ends an episode and they just have to know what happens next? Make that happen with a book series. So, for example, the wild success of Harry Potter is a good example of how excited children are to follow a story through multiple books. So making this approach an easy way to get your child hooked on reading. So try a series is tip number 3. Tip number 4 is make a reading routine. And this is what that means. So your child has chosen their book. You're discussing it at dinner. They're hooked on a series, but you're still not seeing them actually sit down to read the book. So this is why a reading routine comes in really handy. You want to help your child pick a dedicated time to read each day. That's the key. So, for example, maybe right before bedtime is a good time to read, or while waiting for the bus. It can take time to make the routine stick, but once it does, your child will be reaching for their book without even realizing it, because they see it as fun. Tip number 5, how to get your child hooked on reading, is be a role model yourself. As children develop, they model parents, right? They model their parents' behaviors and habits. So while a teacher may instruct a child to read, actually seeing their parents read can be more and more effective motivator. And the more often a child sees a book in your hands, the more likely they are to have one in theirs. So, parents, you need to curb your addiction to TV and pick up a book yourselves. And in turn, your child will start to pick up the joy of reading. So those are my 5 tips for getting your children hooked on reading. Every child is different, so don't be afraid to try multiple approaches until you find one that works best. It can take time. but getting your child hooked on reading is always worth the effort. And this wraps up our show, episode 51, 5 Ways to Get Your Children Hooked on Reading. Stay tuned for our next episode, number 52. Our interview series continues with Dr. Bonnie Singer of Architects for Learning. Thank you for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.